In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a Gerbera Daisy from sugar. Check the link in the video description for all of the details of the tools that I've used. So I'm just beginning with a small ball of burgundy paste which I'm going to press into this daisy centre, and this is going to give me a nice shape to form my centre around. I'm now taking the Gerbera Centre texturing tool and just pressing that lightly onto my centre. Now I'm taking a 22 gauge wire which I bent into a ski pole hook, and I'm just going to insert this into the base of the centre in the centre of it. And now just going to take another little bit of paste and just put that there to help secure it and press it into place. Now I'm just adding a little bit more texture with my centre texture tool, and I'm going to use a little bit of extra detail with the wide end of my Dresden tool. I'm just pressing in little tiny dots just in the very centre to create a slight bit of an indent. I'll now let this firm up completely before adding the central petals. To make the central petals, I'm just rolling out some red paste nice and thinly. And I'm going to take this smallest petal set and cut out one piece with it. Make sure that you press the paste firmly into the cutter to make sure you got a nice neat cut, and then I'm just going to tease it out gently. I'm now using the wide end of my Dresden tool just to gently tease each of these petals and cup them slightly. So that's all of my petals shaped there. So we're now going to add it to the centre, which is dried completely. So I'm just adding a bit of egg white onto the petal set, and I'm going to bring this up to meet the centre. You'll see here that it's a little bit larger than the centre. So what I'm going to do is just carefully pinch it into place so any excess paste is just going underneath the centre, and that will be covered with additional layers. So just slide it round and get the central petals sort of evenly lined up with the centre. And now I'm going to roll out another petal set in exactly the same size and do exactly the same technique. So I'm just pressing them all to make sure it's cut nice and evenly. And then I'm going to use the wide end of my Dresden tool just to gently tease and cut these petals again. Now I'm just going to add some egg white onto the base of the first petal layer. And I'm just going to feed the next petal layer up to meet the first. And again, just pinch it around into position. You can add a bit more egg white here just to help secure all of the petals in place. And then I'm just sliding and pinching them all in position, so they want to sit at the same level as the petal layer before. Now I'm going to cut out the third and final set of these little inner petals, and for this I'm going to use the next size up of cutter. So I'm just pressing it for a nice cut. And now I'm just going to use my Dresden tool just to gently tease and cut each of the petals in the same way that I did before. Now I'm just adding some egg white onto the petals as I did before. So I'm just going all over to make sure that it secures nicely. Now I'm going to feed this up to meet the layer from before. And again, I'm just pinching them into position and making sure that they are nice and level with the previous layer as well. Now I'm adding a little bit of egg white around the very centre, and I'm going to add a few touches to some of the inner petals as well. And now I have some petal dust in a sort of yellowy colour it's mixed with some semolina. This is going to give me my pollen. So I've just dipped the bits that have egg white on into the pollen, and they've just secured nicely. So now I'm dusting these inner petals with some red dust colour. And now I'm using a bit of black mixed with burgundy just to darken the centre of my gerbera. I'll now set this aside to dry whilst I make the outer petals. We're just going to begin by making a foil support. So I'm just taking a piece of foil which has been doubled over a few times, and I'm using my petal cutter as a template just to create this foil support. So you want to shape it around the petal cutter like so, and then use one of the central petal cutters just to form this centre fold here. And this is just going to give a nice cup shape in order to dry our petals. Now I'm going to roll out some red paste, and I rolled it out nice and thinly, and it's large enough for me to cut out 2 petal sets. So you want to press down and make sure you're getting a really nice good cut here. And again, I'm just going to press it down and make sure that each petal is individually pressed out. Now I'm just gently teasing out each petal with my Dresden tool. You just want to be careful to ease them out without tearing any petals. And I'm going to do exactly the same to create a second set of petals. Now taking my first petal set, the other one I've just placed away in a bag to keep it from drying out. I'm just using my ball tool to gently stretch and cup each of the petals. We're not going super thin here, but we're just generally sort of shaping and cupping them. Once I've cupped each of the petals, I'm just going to take my Dresden tool. So for each of the petals, I'm going to use the wide end to draw a line down the middle of the petal, and then the narrow end of the Dresden tool to draw a line either side of that wide line. So you're essentially creating about 3 lines down each petal, one wide one and then 2 narrow ones either side. So I'm just going to do the same for each of the petals. And you can see it's giving a nice cup shape as well. Now I'm turning this upside down so that the side that we've just added the texture to is facing down, and I've placed it into my foil support mould. Now I'm doing exactly the same with the second layer. So I'm just using my ball tool first just to gently shape and cup each of the petals. Now I'm going to do the same with my Dresden, so I'm using the wide end and then the narrow end to create 3 lines on each of the petals. Once all of the petals are complete, I'm then just going to add a little bit of egg white to the centre of my previous layer. And I'm just going to flip this petal set over again and lay it on top of the layer before. So you want them to be just slightly staggered. Now taking some more egg white, I'm just going to brush this all over the centre and just on the very bottoms of the petals. So it's just at the very base of each petal there, which will help it stick around the centre. Then I'm going to punch this wire through both sets of petals and the foil, bring it up to meet the centre, and just make sure it's all secured nicely in place, and then place a clip it underneath your foil support to help the foil from slipping down. Make sure you're happy with the shape of everything and then set it aside to dry completely. Once it's dried, you can then start dusting in some red petal dust onto each of the petals. I find having the foil support here just stops you worrying about any breakages. Then once you've done that dusting, you can then remove the foil support, and I'm just going to add in an 18 gauge wire here just for extra strength. So I'm just taping them together. Now I'm going to take some of this gardener's tire just to thicken the stem of my Gerbera. This I've just bought from Amazon, and I'll link it in the blog post as well. I just find it's a really easy way of thickening your stem, and it's because it's made of wire, it's still got the nice bend to it. So I'm carefully just lining these up with the wire and the gardener's tie and making sure that they're not twisting round each other when I'm attaching them together. Now I'm going to dust the back of my Gerbera petals with some of the red dust. I'm actually just focusing on the ends of the petals here and not the very centre, as the calyx is going to cover that part. Now I'm taking some green flower paste and I'm just going to roll it out nice and thin for my calyx. And I'm using the calyx cutter from my Gerbera set here. And just pressing to make sure it's got a nice cut as well. Now I'm just going to take another little bit of paste and I'm going to roll it into a sort of ball shape. And then just pressing it around the stem. So I'm not using any egg white or edible glue here, I'm just going to press it around the stem and it will dry into place. So this is just going to form the sort of lumpy part of our calyx. And now I'm going to add some egg white all over the calyx. And I'm going to feed this up to meet the base of the flower and just shape it around the sort of bulge and lump that we created. So I'm just pressing it into position, and then I'm going to take my Dresden tool and just help to sort of press it down further and shape it around the bulge. I'm just carefully smoothing a little bit as well with the Dresden tool. But it doesn't need to be too neat because we're now going to add some texture. So I'm using the back of my knife just to press into the paste and give it a bit of texture. So I'm just creating little line indents with the back of my knife and going all the way around the calyx. And then I'm going to do the same on this part as well. So just using the back of the knife and pressing in to create these indents. And I'm also sort of drawing the lines on as well if I want a bit of a deeper impression. So it should look something like that. Now I'm using some pliers just to bend the head of the Gerbera. And now I'm taking some green and yellow petal dust just to create a sort of vibrant green to dust all over the calyx. Once dusted, I like to lightly steam the flower to help set the colours. And that's your finished Gerbera.